I think we'll go ahead and get started because we want to try to hold to our 1 hour, time frame to respect everybody's time. So we are, so there may be a few more folks joining us as we move along here today. But I want to welcome everyone to our monthly Lunch and Learn. And what I think we're going to do today, we're going to talk about data analysis some, but got a couple announcements to make before we do that. And then I'd like to hear from, we want to make sure that in our lunch and learns that the folks who join us have an opportunity to share their thoughts, any good things that are happening in your experience that others might be interested in hearing about, or any help you might need from the group. So first of all, I think, as you know, we are an approved training provider in several states. Obviously, we're in Ohio, and we have been in Ohio for about 8 years now, but we're approved training provider also in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Kentucky and Michigan. And then most recently, we've been approved in Indiana. So since the last time we had a lunch and learn, we've become an accredited school in Indiana. And Indiana has a lot of steps to the process, but one of the steps that's still left, we are an accredited school, but to become eligible for WIOA funds is another step in the process. And we've put in the application for that, and hopefully within next couple of weeks, we'll be approved for WIOA funding in Indiana. And that'll mean that every state that touches Ohio, then we will be an approved training provider for WIOA funds. So that's a good thing for us and hopefully for the people in all those states. The other thing we've talked about for a long time is offering a master black belt program. And we've been working with someone who's been a master black belt trainer for about 20 years. And he's putting together with us working with him, master black belt training program. And it's going to also be a 1-week training, but it's going to be a lot of great material that builds on your black belt backgrounds. But we're going to launch that on September 20th. So that'll be the first week, our first training program in the master black belt. So there'll be a lot more coming out on that in the near future. So those are some of the happenings in our business. We continue to do the monthly black belt courses. We did one, we just had one last month. At this point, they're still virtual, and which can have advantages and disadvantages. But in the future, we're looking at transitioning into, as soon as we feel it's safe and students are willing, transitioning into courses that are really a combination of both, where you can students can sit in class or can take the course virtually, either one at the same time. And if that doesn't work well, we may end up doing one course a month that's virtual and one course a month that is face-to-face. So that's coming down also transitioning back to face-to-face training is coming down the pipe. We did have a company who wanted a face-to-face training here earlier this month, and they came to our facility, and that worked out well. So what I'd like to do now is just let everybody, those of you that are with us, just introduce yourselves if you would, be willing to do that, and tell us what you're doing nowadays. Are you working in transition, and anything about yourself that you think may be of interest, to our group, or if you have information that you need from our group, any questions you'd like to throw out there, feel free to do that. So who would like to venture first into our introductions here?
Sure,
well,
I can go.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, thanks. So yeah, I have my background is I was at Macy's for a long time, and we were using Agile Scrum. My job was to find opportunities to improve the customer experience on the digital e-commerce shopping platforms, improving the customer shopping experience. And we use data science, data analytics. And that's where I became interested in data science and analytics, is using that to start the process of determining what you want to fix, putting the relevant business case behind it. How much are we going to save the company if we do certain things, on the website to improve the customer shopping experience. So that's really where I got, really interested in data science analytics. And I did that for about 3 years at Macy's. And then I got caught up in workforce reduction last spring, spring of 2020. During my process of looking for a new position, I knew I wanted to stay within the customer experience data science realm. So, when the opportunity to take the class, the black belt class, I jumped on it. And it was a whole nother way of looking at it. The concept is the same as using data science analytics, to go after a certain process or certain objective. I mean, black belt is much more detailed and involved, and there's more steps involved, which was a whole new way of looking at things as far as how do we want to go about accomplishing a task. So was really excited to take the class. It was a great class. And then, unfortunately, I'm still in transition. I've gotten really close on a few things, but when the opportunity came up to take this class, I didn't want to lose what I had learned back in September, because I really haven't had a chance to apply it. So I jumped on the opportunity to sit through this session and keep my thoughts and memory fresh on the black belt concepts. So.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. Anybody else?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Loud and
good,
clear.
because I loaned my thing to someone and they never gave it back. The little thing you stick on the top of your computer. My name's Jamie Daniel. I have a hospital healthcare leadership background, and I really enjoy quality improvement. I have always enjoyed seeing the results. But when I learned a lot about the Lean Six Sigma, and I did take the black belt course, which was extremely interesting, and I learned a lot. I haven't actually been able to apply it. I've had 4 interim leadership positions in the last 2 years, and that was what I intended to do. But I'm looking for something else, and I'm not quite sure what it is right now. When you go into a leadership position that's an interim position with a company, they usually expect you to bring a suitcase full of solutions with you that are plug and play. You have a week to figure out what's going on. And I've done pretty well, but I really like to apply things in a systematic way, rather than just going in and trying to meet everyone. They very seldom onboard you to any of their tools and so forth. So it's been a little frustrating for me. I've done pretty well and it pays well, but I really am looking for something career-wise that is totally focused on quality improvement and hopefully using Lean Six Sigma. I have not really ventured out too far there. I did have an interview just before this, and that's why I'm a little bit late. But I am looking for a position, and it doesn't have to pay a lot. I just enjoy making things better with people. And so it's pretty general, but that's what I like to do, and that's what I'm looking for. So, but this class, it really, having it online, it was intriguing to me, and I want to see how it goes and see what I can learn, and if there's anything I can offer at all, I'd be happy to do that too. Thank you.
Okay, Jamie, thank you. Anyone else like to introduce themselves and what's new with you or anything that you need?
Well, not to be a mystery woman, my name's Trisha Boyce. I took the PMP prep and black belt back in 2018, and I've been doing some freelance writing for BPG and for a couple other local businesses occasionally. I guess I've kind of decided I'm not going to have a full-time job, and so I'm just kind of thinking about ways to have multiple and a variety of positions and income streams. As I was telling these guys earlier, I'm also a farmer's wife. So in the summer, we're in the heat of planting and harvesting and selling. But I mostly worked in publishing. And I also, I got my start in publishing and circulation management. So that's kind of how I have gotten to enjoy understanding how the pieces of data fit together, although I was always intimidated by the more technical aspects. But talking to people who have taken and used the Lean Six Sigma tools, I've really grown in confidence and enjoyed learning about how people use the tools in their work. So if you have any great stories to tell, let me know. I'll put them in BPG's newsletter.
Okay, thanks, Tricia. Anybody else have anything like to introduce themselves or anything to throw out here at the beginning?
Hi, everyone. I'm Marlene Johnson. I took the class in September of 2018, and I, like a couple of the others, have not really had an opportunity to utilize any of the processes or techniques directly. I almost did in my last job, which I have relocated from Ohio to Texas in the middle of 2019. And unfortunately, last summer, that role has gone away. And so I am in the market. My background is in procurement and sourcing, in other words, in the supply chain world. And data analytics has become a huge, huge, huge thing in that environment, even before COVID. And I'm expecting that, you know, as we continue to work our way through and hopefully out of COVID, that more companies will get on board and you know, start using the tools and the techniques from the Lean Six Sigma process, but with some of the packages and the tools that are available to assist with that. Partly because, you know, the whole supply chain fell apart last summer, as many of you probably already know and have experienced. Even just look at the automobile market right now. You can't find cars. The rental cars, they're just out because everything broke. You know, the chips and all the things they need to build the cars, they can't get them, and that whole story. But this is the first time that I've been able to join one of the lunch and learns. A lot of times on Thursdays, I have a conflict. And so today's topic was really something that kind of spoke to me, and I wanted to see what, you know, what I could pick up. I do have to drop probably about 5 minutes of the top of the hour for another session that I need to join, but happy to be here today.
Glad to have you.
Still in the area, and things were in person. I was able to drive down to a couple of the in-person early sessions and was happy to be able to do that. So good luck to everybody, and hopefully in whatever my next role is going to be, in sourcing and procurement and working in a variety of different industries, I will be able to contribute and utilize some of the great things that are taking place from me taking the program and getting the certification.
Okay, thanks, Marlene. Anybody else? Everything to
Real quick, my name's Marcy. Some of you know me as Marcelina. I am the Director of Organizational Development for BPG. And I'll just keep it real short. So I'll just say hello to everybody. And it's good to see your lovely faces.
Okay. Joe, you just want a real quick introduction because you're going to be speaking, and I want to ask you to comment on some of the data analysis.
Sure. And I just want to say hi to Jamie.
Hi.
Hey, Jamie.
I hoped you'd be here. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Well, I started a new position about 1.5 years ago, and am working very hard at being retired. And so in that interim, we moved from Columbus to the Raleigh area of North Carolina. But my background, I worked with Paul and the whole team at BPG for, I don't know, maybe 1.5 years, helping out with the black belt and the white and yellow belt training.
We won't let him go, by the way. We're hanging on to him some.
That's right. But my career has been in the healthcare arena in one capacity or another, from health economics and health policy research to strategic planning to Lean Six Sigma. I was initially trained as a black belt and then became a master black belt. For those of you who are in the Cincinnati area or even the Dayton area, I worked for a period of time for Mercy Health. So you guys might be familiar with that. And my role at Mercy was, in essence, to roll out their Lean Six Sigma program. So that's where I'm coming from. I definitely enjoy and recognize the critical importance of data analysis. But one of the things, and I'll touch on this more later, is what I think is far more critical actually than the analysis of data is the correct interpretation of that analysis. And then taking that the next step is how do you convert the analysis and the interpretation into action and strategy. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, well, you can talk more about that here in a few minutes. So I think we'll go ahead and get started on talking about data analysis. So I call the discussion, and this is not a lecture by any means. As I go through this, I put some slides together to really hopefully stimulate some discussion on the kind of points we're making here. But I call this the challenges and breakthroughs in 2021 and beyond for data analysis. And I have to be upfront that I did some research on the internet to see what was the latest and greatest, thinking around data analysis and data analytics. And I found an article that was published in Forbes magazine called "The 3 Analytics Breakthroughs That Will Define Business in 2021. It came out in early May. And so I thought, this was really, had some great information. So I'm extracting a lot of, my information from this article here today to be totally transparent about it. But, okay. See if I can, there we go. Now, first 2 or 3 slides are really from our materials that we use in our courses. just as a quick, very quick review. If you recall, in pretty much all of our Six Sigma courses, we have this slide where we define, Six Sigma, in a dozen words or less, or actually a dozen words. And that definition starts with the words data driven. So when we talk Six Sigma, we're talking data. And so that's really where, data, as we're going to see here, is the voice of the process. And data tells us how we're performing, where we're performing well, where we have issues, helps us to establish priorities for solving problems, and tells us where our current level of performance is. We've set a goal from there. We use data to track our performance, and then ultimately data tells us when we hit our goal, and then we continue to use data to monitor our performance as we move forward in the future and take on the next challenge. So we talk about the power of data. Data drives decisions and actions, of course. What are data? Data are measurements, observations we record, use to describe, understand, and optimize, our processes and optimize our performance. Data is the voice of the process. And so data, we take raw data ultimately, and then we look at it in different ways, analyze it, and then make decisions based on that. So data is used to describe our products, processes, identify the issues and opportunities, draw conclusion, predict results, and ultimately make the best business decisions. When applying data analysis, we need to be measuring the right thing, make sure it's good data, make sure that be confident in our conclusions, make sure we have enough data to really do a good analysis, and then also be efficient in our analytics and the way we use data, and be fast enough with our reaction to the data so that we can make good decisions and make them quickly. So this is where I get into the material from this article. And this person, Sharmila Mulligan, who's Chief Strategy Marketing Officer at Alteryx. This is a quote from her. Data's the most valued commodity, and it continues to grow exponentially year over year. So we're continuing to have more sources of data. So we end up with more data from different sources. And now we need to know what to do, with that data. So the 3 data analysis breakthroughs, according to the authors, and according to this this article, are first of all analytics automation. So more and more data is being automated, which enables us to have more data and to have it more quickly and access to that data. We need data that we can turn into, we can statistically analyze, and it helps us to understand, how it needs to be intuitive, so we can easily understand what this data is telling us, and it really needs to be data that engages the people in the organization in the process, and it needs to be fast. We need data that comes to us quickly. So kind of breaking down each of these concepts. First of all, analytics, automation. We need to tame the complex data while upskilling teams to be proficient with the data and with the analytics, the analysis of the data. So more data is coming from more sources. There's lots of new sources. There are sensors out there on machines or in, all over in our environment that are picking up data and then spitting it back to us on a real-time basis. We can get data from social platforms and from mobile devices. So data is coming at us from all directions. And some of the challenges we're having with all this data is sometimes organizations really don't have a strategy about how they're going to interpret, what data to look at, how to utilize that data effectively. So there needs to be an analytics strategy versus lots of ad hoc processes and fragmented technologies across the organization. We need to pull all that together to be able to choose the right data to analyze and to put it in the right format in front of the right people in order to utilize it effectively for the organization. So I want to stop here for a second and just get your thoughts, up to this point. This is really, there's three points here, three major slides. This first one being about data automation and the amount of data that's available, which is a lot, coming from all directions. So any thoughts from you about where you've seen this as an issue or where you've seen solutions around, this type of challenge?
I'd like to comment. One
Okay.
of the issues that I've seen in a couple of different places and I'm aware of just from others' comments in a sourcing group that I participate in pretty regular is that a lot of companies, they depend on Excel spreadsheets. They've got all these Excel spreadsheets with all this information, or they've got stuff in SharePoint and they've got stuff here and stuff, Google Sheets, and it's everywhere. And none of it can talk to each other in most cases, rather than, again, having a strategy and having a plan, maybe to have it in some tool where everybody uses one thing and then all the information is there and making it easier for them to utilize and to work.
Okay, so that's a good example of this problem existing out there in the workplace. Has anybody seen good solutions to that? How an organization has maybe solved this problem or part of this problem?
Tableau for those.
Yeah. I was going to just say Tableau.
That was the good part of the rest of my bad story.
Yeah. We had similar issue. We were using Excel for most of our data sources, and then we started putting everything into Tableau. Macy's we had our own. We were using a Mars database and kind of everything fed into that. And then we built Tableau around that to pull in the data. And then, to your point, Paul, the crucial thing was automating that process of pulling the relevant data from Tableau into, pulling it from Mars into Tableau, and then creating it, creating a user-friendly format. And we created portals, and users throughout the enterprise, whether you're in supply chain or you're in San Francisco monitoring voice of the customer data, you could customize the view. So we had gotten pretty far along in that process. This took years to do this. It wasn't overnight. But one of the things you mentioned is the social media platforms is something that we had just started tackling, and that was a whole nother set of data that we were using more as for anecdotal type feedback as far as rather than true data science and making smart decisions from it. So.
Okay. Great input. Any other thoughts on this slide?
If I could make a comment.
Yeah, sure.
So, and I think Paul's going to get to this point in a slide or two, so I don't want to jump the gun, but I think it's appropriate here. The key thing nowadays is speed. One of the key things is speed. And so James and I think someone else there we're talking about Tableau. And when in the last position I had, we were just getting into Tableau. And one of the key things about that is, so in what the old world was, what we hoped the old world was going to be is you have your data analysts and you have a problem. You say, pull this data and get me this data and help me answer the problem. So they go and they do that and they present the data a week later and you look at it and you say, well, this is great, but you know what? I really need to answer this other question. So can you get the data for that? And a week later, you give them back the data. With Tableau, you can structure it, or any other data visualization tool. You can structure it so that you push the analysis back to the user and they can ask 100 what-if questions of that database in real time, real fast. And so that's what I believe we need to be going for. And what businesses need right now is to speed up that data analysis and really push it as close to the user as possible.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's, you know, rather than going back and forth with the developers, the user, which was me, once the sourcing files are complete into Tableau, then my team could just pull what we wanted.
Right.
And then every now and then we wanted a new source, but it was fast. I mean, we could use it pretty quickly when we needed it.
Okay, let's move to the next point here. Data should be intuitive and engaging, and we need to make analytics accessible to everyone. So modern analytics automation platforms are accessible to all. Then you can make data accessible, but people need to know what to do with that data. So organizations need to educate their entire workforce with critical data skills that help drive business decisions. As organizations develop and change, you know, one of the things that I've been involved with a lot in my career has been creating empowered workforces where we've driven decisions down, you know, further, you know, to you know, down into the workforce, down toward the frontline workers. Those of you who've been in my classes before have heard me talk about in the steel industry where we developed self-directed teams. We actually did not have supervisors on the floor, and the teams had to make all the decisions throughout their shift that supervisors usually made. In order to make those decisions, they had to have access to data and quick access to data, which we provided them. And then we trained them in how to interpret that data and how to make those decisions. And it was amazing. And then we also had incentive programs built around performance data. And there was one particular metric that drove the incentive program that they had real time, they could compute daily themselves where they stood month to date on the incentive they were going to ultimately receive at the end of the month. And they knew the factors that impacted their incentive, and they had control over those factors, and the motivation was huge. We our goal was to reduce our cost. The metric was variable cost per ton of steel processed. Our goal was to cut that by about 40% over a 5-year period. Well, they more than cut it in half in 6 months by having immediate access to the performance data and making decisions in even how they organized themselves and how they would do their work to be more efficient. And they were making improvements almost on a daily basis. So that's a kind of an example of organizations educating their entire, these were frontline workers. These were the lowest level. They were the hourly plant employees, and they had access to data that end up cutting our cost, our processing cost in half. So that kind of goes along with data democratization, easy for me to say. Huh? You know, every employee should have access to automated data via dashboards, reports, views, and enterprise applications, and in whatever ways that they can interpret and they can use to impact decisions on the job, you know, every day. So that obviously means it has to be, you know, fast data that they receive very quickly, feedback very quickly on what's going on in the workplace that's affecting the job they're doing. So anybody else have any other thoughts about these concepts?
Well, I would just share that in my previous role where I, used a example, I used to work as part of the global procurement team with RELX, which is the parent owner of LexisNexis and their other divisions. Mm-hmm. So the entire company did not have access to Tableau. It was our global procurement team members globally, if you will. And then we also had a separate team that was just the analytics team. But what we could do, on the fly in seconds, if you will, if there was a business stakeholder that wanted a particular report or even wanted a WebEx or a Skype or what at the time, whatever tool we were using at that moment to view it, one-on-one, we could show it to them and we could drill down, like if they wanted to know, what did I spend on IT, but drill down to the lower levels, how many keyboards did I buy or how many millions of dollars did I spend, for example. We could do that very quickly and just, attach a copy of a report if they wanted something to hold in their hand to touch. So every employee, thousands of employees did not have access to it.
Could there have been would there have been a benefit if the thousands of employees had more direct access to data?
Probably not. No, because they probably would not have known how to slice and dice and to really to do it and to utilize it after they got it. So if they could request what they wanted, then we knew how to do the categories, the subcategories, the divisions by country or whatever it was that they wanted. And then the other part of that is because there were two systems coming into one, some of the information was manually sent there, at least in the beginning. So there were still some quirks being worked out. How that's done now, that was 3 years ago. So maybe they have progressed to more of that, or maybe at a divisional level or something. I don't know.
So a couple of things that's important about data is, first of all, if employees have access to data, it needs to be data that's relevant to their job and to the things they control. And secondly, they have to be educated in how to interpret that data and as much interpretation as can be done for them in the form of graphs and charts or other ways of interpreting the data and analyzing the data should be provided to them. So they need to have data that's meaningful to them, that's and relevant to what the things that they can control on their job, and then they need to know how to interpret that data and use it, and then also be permitted to make decisions based on that data. Okay. So we talked about speed before. So my point number 3 there is hyperspeed. The faster we can receive the data that's real time is the best, of course, where it's immediate and it's in your face and can be interpreted. But we need to really answer every type of question in our organizations faster. Faster is better as long as it's good data and good analysis. So the X factor in a data-driven digital transformation that creates exponential business value is speed. And so this can help create a significant competitive advantage for any organization. If you're in a competitive environment, the quicker that you can analyze data that's taking place and respond utilizing that data in ways that improve customer service or customer satisfaction, as well as ways to improve internal performance to be more efficient. We always say in our classes, the 2 big concepts in Lean Six Sigma is to become more efficient, more effective. More effective always relates to customers. How do we improve customer satisfaction and service to our customers? And then efficiency relates to doing it in a cost-effective manner. So those things can give us a competitive advantage. Automated data collection analysis speeds time to insights in decision-making. Insights meaning the interpretation of it. What's the data telling us? What's it saying we need to do differently? And then from there, we're able to quickly make decisions. And here's another example, going back to the one I used before, in this company where we had self-directed work teams. The people on the 3rd shift might run across a problem, and the traditional, when they ran across a problem they couldn't solve, the traditional way to handle that was to set that, maybe they're processing some steel, set that whole order aside for the next day when management comes in and they can evaluate the issue and provide an answer. And maybe, but in the meantime, the customer's order has been delayed. So we provided these people with a way to get the information they needed, and information is data, get the information. They actually had the authority to call the customer at 2 a.m. in the morning, and if there was an issue with a question about an order, and get an answer, and then usually within 5 minutes they're back processing the order in the correct manner and making the right decision and taking care of the customer on time. So in that case, the employee at the lowest level of the organization had the data they needed to understand, first of all, there is a problem, but they also had the empowerment and authority to get it solved and make a decision and satisfy the customer. And businesses will move from a backward look at what happened. So a lot of data and ways of looking at data in the past have told us, you know, what did we do right or wrong last week or last month or last year? And we need to use data to take a forward look to help us know, okay, so this data is helping us to know, okay, what do we need to do now? What do we need to do next? And it gives us, helps us to predict what, what's going to happen next, and also help us prescribe what we need to do in order to make sure what happens next is the best thing for the customer and for the company. So any thoughts on these points?
Paul, this is Mike. The side factor of speed is your volume increases, and with more volume, you have also not only more good data, but now you have what could be minutia data that's unimportant. And so how do you filter that out and make sure you're getting only the data that's relevant for this given situation or this given question?
So that's a good question. That's one of the challenges. I think I just.
Oh, I
did.
might. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just a comment I might make on that. So putting that into the context of a Lean Six Sigma project, I mean, one thought would be going back to your problem statement. So based on your problem statement, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Or said another way, what's the question you're trying to answer? And seek out data that address that specific question or that specific answer, and get rid of everything else that, as you said, could just be noise or confounding information. Now, the other part of that that's much difficult, how do you know if the data you have are in fact accurate? And sometimes you need to do what I call a sniff test and get to the people who are most intimate with that information. And if you see something that looks like it just doesn't make sense to you, I don't know, you're looking at the temperature of the temperature of something that you're making, and you know that it should be within the parameters of, say, 10 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and you see a value of -8, or you see a value of 82. Was that a real measurement, or was something wrong there? So you need to get closer to the source and find out, does this make sense, and could this have happened?
Similarly to that, Joe, my example would be, again, my reference is procurement, is, if we take a particular category of spend and we see this huge, like $2 million, wait a minute, that's impossible. So, what we would have to do is then go into the PO system and look at the vendors that were showing that spend and say, hey, that vendor is not a marketing vendor. That vendor is an IT vendor, where someone may have entered a PO under the wrong spend category or the wrong budget category, and then have to manually correct it, on the back end rather than it having entered correctly on the front end. So, those kinds of systems allow you to not only see those things and catch them, then you can correct them. So the next time when you run it, maybe second quarter or the first 6 months, you'll see that the number is now where it belongs.
So Lean Six Sigma does give us a lot of tools for determining what data is, the right data, and how to, how to look at that data, how to break it down. And so we need to go through that rigorous data analysis process up front to determine, what data is going to be the right data, make sure we have good data, and it needs to be fast, but not so fast that we can't make sure that we're utilizing good data and making good decisions from that data. So I'm going to move to another set of slides here. And share these with you. Joe's going to address these slides. Okay, well, I thought it was
up just a minute ago. Well, while Paul's pulling that up, I'm going to just say I want to thank you all for your time today. We all really appreciate it. Just want to ask you, did you have a chance to look at the article that was in the May Voices issue? That was an article that Trisha and I worked on. And the genesis of it was, we were talking about something that might be of interest and of use relating to looking at data, and how we look at data and how we analyze it. And so one of the things that was top of mind for me at the time was news reports that I saw here in the Raleigh area, showing graphs and talking about the COVID-19 data, and showing the number of cases, number of hospitalizations, number of mortality, all of that. And while it was very good and very important information, one of the things that I found very frustrating was that they show the graph, let's just pick a number of cases, and they'd show a series of data points and they're going up. Maybe they level off a little bit. And then there's one data point for yesterday and the number of hospitalizations was down. And it's like this big deal. Cases are down. And I'm saying, but that doesn't mean anything. Of course they can't hear me. And then another day they'll show it with, two data, everything's going up and there are 2 data points down. And they're saying, we've got a trend, it's trending down. And I'm saying, no, I'm sorry, I'm yelling at the television. They can't hear me, they're not paying attention. But I'm saying, you don't know that yet. And so my point is, and I don't want to belabor it, is we can't, in data analysis, we can't overreact to just a couple of data points. And if you think back to your black belt training and statistical process control, one of the 8 rules is that in order to conclude that we have a statistically significant change, is 7 data points consecutively going up or going down. And I know some people say 6, some say 7, some say 8. It's something in that order. But we can't react to 1 or 2 data points. And it gets to also the point I made earlier of, when you analyze, it's important to analyze data, but it's also important to come to the right conclusions. And I think sometimes coming to the wrong conclusion is worse than coming to no conclusion, or at least admitting you can't come to a conclusion yet. So I'm not going to repeat the slides that were in the Voices article. I've got a couple of more that are along the same vein, but this was from an article that looked at the coronavirus results, or what was happening in Italy and Spain. In early the data were from early 2000. And the reason why Jeffrey Chu chose Italy and Spain was because they were the two countries that were hit the hardest and hit the earliest. And so, Paul, if we can go to the next slide. They looked in both countries, they looked at it by individual region. In Italy, they looked at 21 regions. In Spain, they looked at 19. And they looked at a country as a whole. So what I've highlighted here is with these red circles are dates where it looks like things are trending down. But then what happens immediately after those 3 data points? Well, in the first one, you got 3 data points going down, and then you have a spike. And then it trends down again. And a few days later, you have a huge spike and a big drop, and it trends down again. And then we start doing a little sawtooth action. So Paul, if we can go to the next slide. This is from Spain, same thing. A couple of points going down, 1 point down from a spike in the third week of March. And then things are just starting to climb. That was in the Madrid region. In Catalonia, if you look at the highlighted area, we have sort of, it went down, it went up, it went down, it went up, and then it really spiked again. So the point of all this is we can't look at 1 or 2 or even 3 data points going in the direction we want them to go and say, we've made a great improvement and everything is getting better. Because we'll find out, very quickly, and it's certainly in the COVID case, that's not really what's happening in real life. And this approach, this way of looking at things doesn't just relate to COVID data. It relates to, to any data that we look at. You've got to go beyond focusing on just a couple of data points, and especially when they go in the direction you want them to go to. So the point that Paul was making, we need to look at data objectively. We need to look at enough data, and we need to let data tell us the story. Let the data give us the answer rather than coming in with a preconceived idea of what we want to see. And then once we get the information that that's statistically valid, then the next question is, so what? What caused this to happen? And how do I keep the direction that I want going? What changes do I need to make? What lessons do I need to learn from where the data are going? So I know that we are just a little over time, so I'm going to stop and just open it up for questions. I know we're a couple of minutes past 1, and I do appreciate everyone's time. And so what questions do you all have?
Questions or comments?
My comment is this has been great. I do have to drop, but I really enjoyed this. So thanks to, Joe and Paul and everyone else that has participated, and hope to see you guys again in the future.
Okay, Marlene.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Marlene.
for your input. Have a great day. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, so Joe, with this case study, what was the recommendation about how to measure? I know we've never had this experience before, but what is the recommendation of how to measure these types of fluctuations in data? To at some point you have to say, okay, we have a real trend here.
Right.
Was there any conclusions that came out of how to measure similar events like this on how do you determine, okay, we have a trend that's confirmed. Now, how do we go about digging into the root cause?
Actually, no, that wasn't the point of the article. What I believe the authors were looking at was trying to figure out what's happening in these two countries.
Mhm.
And they looked at it by region to look at how did the number of cases play out over time. And it was a time period of, I think, February and March. And so what they were really looking at was how did the virus, I don't want to use the word spread because I'm not sure that's the right word, but how did it evolve? What was going on in these two countries over time? And what they found here in Spain, for Spain, I did pick up the one that had Madrid and Catalonia. These two regions had the highest incidence over time and the highest incidence the earliest. In Italy, if you can flip back one slide, Lombardy was one of the regions, and the Basilicata was the other region that they found where the spike happened earlier and bigger. So when you look at the initial graphs they drew, there actually were exponential curves. So they started out low and started peaking. And then they did it taking the log of the thing, and I'm not going to get into that.
Yep.
But again, they focused on, the point of the article was, how was this spreading? Where did it hit the hardest, the earliest?
Got
They
it.
didn't get into how would you analyze the data.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Any more thoughts? I think.
No, this has been great. I missed this stuff. So thank you. Thanks for inviting us. I'll make sure I come back to the next one.
All right. Thank you all for coming today, and we'll hopefully see you again next month, future Lunch and Learns.
Good.
And if anybody's interested in Master Black Belt, let us know.
Okay. Sounds good.
Save you a seat.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Everybody have a
you.
great holiday. Bye.
Good to see you, Joe.
Good to see you all. Good to see you, Jamie.
Thanks,
Okay.
Joe, and everyone
Bye.
else.